All right, all right, all right. We're going to be waiting for maybe give it another 10, 15 seconds. Let everybody start coming in. Inshallah, everybody's doing well tonight. I'll be introducing our guest as well. William, while we wait,
Sir.
are you a coffee guy or a tea guy?
I'm a water guy. I've actually never had a cup of coffee my entire life, if you can believe that. I just drink out of coffee cups, so then you get less grief about it.
Personally, not a big coffee guy. I'll probably have coffee like maybe once a year,
Yeah,
but I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't have tea.
I will occasionally have a tea, but usually it's just an endless stream of water.
Just
But yeah,
water.
it's in coffee mugs all the time because otherwise people think something's a little off if you don't drink coffee. Like, what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
You don't
I hear
drink
that from my
coffee?
wife often. I hear that from my wife often.
You don't drink coffee? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. A lot of you may be joining because you've heard about the potential tax benefits that are coming to almost a near end as the year winds down. Alhamdulillah, we were able to have William, who I'm going to be introducing very shortly, to come join us to kind of speak about one, the 2020 tax law updates and what does that mean for you? Also, what donating to an organization like SABA or Rise Academy or Kissa Kids means for you personally, for you and your family from a tax perspective. So let me start off by introducing William quickly. William is the managing director of Slade and Company, specializing in small business and complex tax planning and preparation. Will has a master's in accounting, is a certified financial planner, and is an enrolled agent. He has spoken at national conferences regarding tax, small business, planning, and accounting. And William, if I'm not mistaken, you're an outdoors guy, big runner.
I do run, not as fast as I used to. I ran collegiately, hurdles though, short distance and fast. Now I'm much slower and much not nearly as quick as I once was.
Fair enough, fair enough. And then what's your mile time? We need to know. The audience is dying.
I ran a 6:43 mile about 2 months ago.
Whoa, not
Which
bad. You have to
which
slow
sounds
down.
great, but I'm older now. When I was younger, my sister was reading through my old notebooks with my old track time. She's like, back in the late 90s, you ran 2 miles in under 12 minutes. I'm like, so you just poke the bear that I'm feeling all good, that I'm being healthy during this pandemic. And you just can't let me have that moment in the sun. You have to bring me back down to earth really quickly. That's what family's for. That's what family's for.
Well, with the water diet that you have, I'm pretty sure you're hydrated enough to turn this horse back around.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, with that said, and kind of giving an introduction, William, if you can start presenting, hopefully, and we can start going through what is the taxation of 2020 and what this will mean for us, and then we'll be fielding questions on the second half of the hour, where we'll be taking questions from the audience and general questions that most will have around donating to SABA.
Perfect. So I always like starting when we have these kind of conversations with kind of a lay of the land. It gives everyone a really good opportunity to get a feel for what's happened so far and what potentially may happen in the future, which unfortunately right now is a lot of conjecture. But I think it's important for people to realize that we're not quite at the end of the year. We've still got a whopping 7 days left, really six, considering tomorrow. We're already in the evening today. So most of the actionable tax planning can still be done if you have a little bit of time. One of the most common things that people ask us at the office is, I have an expectation that I'm going to have taxes next year when I see my tax person in, February, March, or April. What can I do to mitigate that? Because everyone wants to pay the appropriate amount of tax and no one wants to pay more tax. And so the question about that becomes a little more esoteric, which is, okay, we know we have this balance owed. We know that we have this money that we're going to have to give. How can we best utilize it? Is it better to put it in retirement accounts? Is it better to sell off some stock if we have some gains that we're trying to offset some losses? Or is it better to push the money forward and give it to an entity and organizations who can use it, and then you reap the benefits from that twofold? When we talk about these things, one of the things we always make sure that people understand is that everything is all relative to your tax situation. So when I'm speaking this evening, a lot of it's going to be very general. I would encourage you to speak with your tax professional who knows your specific tax situation, because that really is going to temper a lot of the things that we say. What's interesting there is that this year has been exciting, not in typically the good way. And so we had a delay in the tax season, which typically meant that you didn't see your person early, which means that there was a delay in any tax planning. So now everyone's rushing in the 11th hour to really get that last little bit of water from the stone. But then on top of that, we had a little election thing happen here in the States. And as a result of that, we also have the expectation that next year, 2021, could mean a dramatically different tax situation. The Tax and Job Acts of 2018 really changed a lot of the tax calculation. It typically lowered people's taxes. It completely realigned the Schedule A, which is where most of the charitable donations lie. And so, with all of that happening, the question that I get often is, do we expect that that will change? And the answer is likely not, for two reasons. A, we don't know who's going to control the Senate yet, because there's an election on January 5th, which is going to be question one. But the other reason is that the entirety of the Tax and Jobs Act of 2018 expires. It had a finite lifespan. So a lot of these things don't need to be changed because they're going to go away anyway, and then we will revert back to 2017. People then say, okay, well, Will, you know that Biden's going to be in there. Biden wants to change the world. Biden wants to spend all of our money. Biden wants to raise our taxes. Biden wants to do this. Biden wants to do that. What do you think he's actually going to get done? And my answer is, well, he can't really go across against what he said, which is no one who makes less than $400,000 taxable income. And taxable income is different than real income, because there's your total income, which becomes your AGI. It's reduced by a couple things, which is then further reduced by your standard deduction or your itemized deduction. And then you get to your taxable income. So most people who have taxable income above 400,000 are typically making somewhere closer to 500,000. And so that's something very, very important to understand. I don't think he's going to touch anything below that for a variety of reasons. One of them being that we're in the midst of a pandemic, and you don't want to increase taxes on people who are already struggling. It's just not a good look for any politician. The other thing is, what do you think will happen to that group? Well, I have guesses because no one really knows yet. My guess is that you're going to see probably a 2% increase in your top tax bracket back to where it was in 2017. My other personal conjecture, which we have shouting matches in the office about these things, is the net investment income tax, which is a tax specifically for people who have investments, namely stock sales and some rental stuff. I think that, and that's an Obama era tax change. I think he could tweak that and increase that a little bit. The other thing that I personally think might change is Schedule A. And I think Schedule A might revert back to where it was sooner. That would actually be a positive because of a couple reasons. The biggest complaint that everyone had during the Tax and Job Act change was that their SALT tax, their state and local taxes, were reduced to $10,000. That's your state tax withholding, that's your property tax, that's your DMV fees. That was capped at $10,000. So for a lot of high earners, that lowered their itemized deduction. For many of them, that actually made them go from itemized to standard deduction, which is a negative for what we're talking about here in this forum. And so I think they could go back and go get rid of that SALT limitation, which would be good because that helps people in New York, New Jersey, California, primarily. So we have a Democratic president, we have a Democratic House. Of course, you want to help more Democratic leading states. I think the other things that might change in Schedule A is that the miscellaneous section, which was completely eliminated, which includes things like deductions for police and fire, deductions for teachers, deductions for business use of home. And that's the reason why I think that that might change, is because so many people right now are working from home and they're getting no tax advantage for it. You go back and you revert this thing and it looks really good on paper. It helps a lot of people. But the reality is that for most people who are in certain brackets anyway, in the, the top 4 brackets, it really won't change much, because for most people making a family wage above about $150,000, they're not seeing a huge change because of Tax and Jobs Act anyway. There was not this huge savings. The one area of savings was the one area that no one wants back, which is AMT, alternative minimum tax. And that is usually triggered. Typically, we see that for people who have a lot of stock options. So by reverting that back, you're actually going to encourage more charitable donations as well. Because one of the questions we got consistently during the 2018 season was, I am no longer itemizing my taxes. I am taking a standard deduction because it went from 12,000 for a single to 24,000 for a married couple. My charity doesn't count anymore. I'm going to stop giving, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of charitable giving to begin with, but that's a whole separate question. But people weren't seeing the tax advantage of it. And so people who were already high charitable were still seeing it, but it had a muted effect. And with all the things that are going on right now, to encourage charity, to encourage a couple more of these deductions, to release the SALT limitation would all be positives. And I think those are things you can get pushed through, even if the Democrats do not control the Senate, because we won't know what happens on that until January 5th. All of that said, we don't know what's going to happen, and we're trying to do tax planning for the end of 2020 with a completely unknown 2021, which if you ask a tax person, we like knowing the future. We like being able to predict what's going to happen to you, because 90% of what we do and what we tell you is contingent on the tax law staying somewhat normal. And we would like them to stay somewhat normal, but I think a couple little of these nips and tucks would have a huge impact in areas that are positive. Uh, Talking a little bit more specifically about the charitable side of it, one question we get a lot is, if I gave to an organization, whether that be a school, a religious organization, or a nonprofit like a food bank, a food providing organization, is there a difference? And the answer is no. Religious organizations, all nonprofits, as long as they're not private charitable foundations, are treated the same. So you can really determine where you want your charitable dollars to go and still reap the same benefits. So there's no negative for any one or a positive for another. One thing that was changed in the Tax and Jobs Act that a lot of people don't realize, because most people don't hit this limit, is that they upped the amount of charitable donations that can be made. It used to be at 50% of your taxable income could be given away in charity, which is a pretty significant amount of money. It now is up to 60%. So people go, well, no one's giving 50% of their money away. I'm like, that's not entirely true. The one scenario that we see that consistently, and when people are asking what the limit are, I would almost be assured that the next thing is, I work for insert tech company here. I was employee number 38. I got shares of company for $2, and they're accidentally at $300 a share now. I now have $20 million and I don't need it. And I'd much rather give it to people who can use it, give it to organizations that are going to further my ideals and allow that money to work. And so they go, well, I want to give $10 million away. They made $500,000, but I want to give $10 million away. What does that do for me? That's great. Some organization is going to be extremely happy with this gift. Should I sell those stocks and then give the money away? That's the most common question with that. And the answer is no. Never sell the stock. Give the stock to the organization. And the reason why you want to give that is, in our example, we bought it for $2. It's worth $300. There's $297 of gains. If you sell it and give them the money, you're basically shorting yourself 25% of that money, because you're going to pay 15% tax federal, maybe 20 depending on your income, and you're going to pay state tax as well. So in California, top rate 13%, 20 plus 13, 33% of the money just disappeared into the ether. If you give the stock, however, you get the donation at the fair market value at the time of the gift. So you're giving away $300 a share stock. You're getting credit for $300 a share stock. The organization has $300 a share stock. If you sold it, you're really only giving them $200 per share. But now you're giving them 300. And what happens when the organization sells the stock? They pay no tax. They're a nonprofit. They get to reap the full benefit of that sale and use all the money without paying any tax on it. And as long as you don't exceed that 60% threshold on that number, so with highly appreciated stock, this is something we need to be aware of. Say you have the $500,000 in income, and $300,000 is your threshold, but you gave $1 million away. We would encourage you to give $1 million away, right? Good idea. What happens to the monies above the 300,000? Well, they get suspended. They get to be used next year and potentially the year after that. So you don't lose the deduction. You may be spreading out the deduction over a course of years for your personal taxes, but the organization gets the money now. They can utilize that money now. And with stock, we don't know if it's going to be the next Uber where they open up and they drop 50%. We don't know if it's going to be, one of these other ones that have happened more recently where the stock doubled. But if you give away the shares at full market value, you get the credit for that. And that is powerful because you completely avoid all that taxation. The organization gets all the money, and that's how you do it. And so the question is well, Will, I work for Google and I have $4 million in stock. I want to give that $1 million away. When do I need to do it by? December 31st. Everything must happen before the end of the year. If it happens after the end of the year, we've got a problem, and then it will roll into next year. A lot of companies also do the matching funds. They want to see it happen before the end of the year as well. We don't get credit for the matched portion, but we get credit for the portion that we provide. Then the organization gets the double, right? And so everything must happen before the stroke of midnight on December 31st. Then everyone goes, well, what happens if I mail SABA a check for $100,000? And I walk down to the post office and on December 31st, I put it in the mailbox. Do I get credit? They're not going to get it until the 4th? And so the answer is yes. The second you release those funds, it counts as a donation. And so it's important that you just get the postmark on there, that you document everything before the end of the year. But I would encourage you definitely to do it. Charitable, we don't know what's going to happen next year. I assume that it will still be robust, but taxes will change. And so, if we know that we have a large tax liability, or if we know that organizations, especially now with what's going on, they need the money. They need to be able to utilize that money to help. And if we have the capacity to help, let's get the tax deduction now and be able to utilize it. Charitables are definitely interesting. With schools and with regular nonprofits, you have the opportunity to really direct your money and get it to where it's needed most. But we would definitely encourage people to do it as often as possible. And charitable donations can be structured in a way that allows you to really reap the benefit over a couple years. It also allows, there are things that are even beyond just the straight charitable donations where you can actually do a lot more with your money and have the entity have control over it for a longer period of time. So charitable, it's we have a few more days, so we want to make sure that people get on that now before the time slips away. It definitely needs to be done before the year's end. So that's kind of I think those are the major points when it comes to what's going to happen. We don't know. My guess is taxes are going up. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or a master's in accounting to discern that. But there is a lot of advantages still, and there's still a lot of time to do a lot of tax planning before year's end.
Awesome. So we're fielding a few questions that are coming in. So one of the first ones is, does William have any experience in managing ISO RSUs taxes?
Unfortunately, I have a ton of experience managing those things. My office, we opened a little bit about me. I was a financial planner for years before I decided that I like taxes more. And so my financial planning practice was primarily with a lot of people in the Valley who were getting options around the tech bubble burst. I switched over to taxes and understood the dynamics of the financial planning side of it. And the ISOs and the RSUs are definitely my wheelhouse. You don't see as many ISOs anymore. They're not as in favor. And the reason for that has to do with some bargain element. There's this thing called a bargain element. It's a fancy tax code thing. that it's actually could be taxable before you even sell. And so it was a bad thing, because when the tech bubble burst, there were a lot of people who had this bargain element who were owing $8,000 to $10,000 in taxes, even though they never sold. And by the time they realized that, the stock had crashed because the bubble was bursting. And then they had a third of the value, but that still had the tax bill. So they had to sell a bunch more. And that triggered additional taxes for income tax side. And so it created this snowball. So RSUs are much more in favor now. RSUs are also a lot more straightforward. But yeah, our firm, we have a significant amount of experience in RSUs, ISOs, and other types of executive compensation as well.
Got it. I'll just, before I ask the next question, I want to encourage everybody to be looking over here on the bottom of the screen. Please go to Slido to ask your questions if you have any questions to ask. We have about 40 people who are watching right now. So if you have any questions, this is a great time to take advantage of William's background and experience, expertise. You guys can ask here on Slido. The next question, William, I think you kind of answered this, but maybe just because I know this actually is brought up a lot of the time, so it would be actually really helpful. So if I mail a check during this year, 2020, to my mosque, which is SABA, and cashed it on, let's say, January 1st, for example, that's when they cashed it. My responsibility was done in the sense of getting it over to SABA. Does that mean whether it's cleared or not? At least I had it written out. I wrote the date on the top. I got a certified mail. Am I in the clear?
You are in the clear. The end of the year creates a lot of interesting little hiccups because, businesses, nonprofits, a lot of people do take time off. And even if you don't take time off, the banks are closed. I mean, the bank's not open on the 1st. Even if they got the check on the 1st, they can't put that check in the bank until realistically probably the 4th. And so as long as you document on your side that you did that charitable donation, which I would say, in today's world, if you're worried about it, if it's a significant amount of money, if you're writing the mosque a check for $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, take a picture. Take a picture when you're about to put it in the mailbox of the check before you put it in the envelope, that it's timestamped. If anyone, and the only person who would ever ask you this is the IRS, if they were to audit you, which you have a less than 2% chance of getting audited. So they'd have to audit you, then question the donation, and they would look at the check and say, show us the check. And usually you have a clear check. It was December 30th, I wrote this check. Can you prove to us that you sent it? Well, no, but the mosque cashed the check on the 5th. I clearly mailed it in time. If the mosque and the people who are doing the donations are dragging their feet for, I don't know why they would, if there's money coming in, you typically rush to the bank. But if they drag their feet and say someone was sick, the person who normally does the donations, they're unable to get there and they don't do the deposit until the 15th. The IRS still is going to look at that as that's reasonable. If you're giving $150,000 to the mosque and you say, hey, I need proof that I sent you this check, they're going to say, yeah, we had the check, but this person who normally does the deposit was out sick, and so he didn't deposit it until the 15th. They're not going to quite. But the important thing is that it's dated prior to the end of the year. If you're skating on thin ice and you get it on the last day, just take a picture, and that's typically sufficient enough supporting evidence to show that it was mailed.
Just like I think as best practice, right? The best thing to do is if you intend on making a donation before the end of the year. Today is what, the 24th. Today is a better day than any day to kind of get it the earlier.
A good day to start making donations is January 1st, and then just kind of keep going from there. It just makes it a little easier. But candidly, most people do look at the year, and at the end of the year, they realize, okay, I have a little extra money. I want to make sure I'm providing others with some money, and that's when they usually do those donations. Another good way is to completely eliminate the postal service from the thing. Bring it down to the mosque. Walk in, hand it over. If you're on December 31st when you do this, ask for a receipt. Then they'll give you something. The bigger the check, the better. But they'll give you a document that will show that you got it in there in time, and that also will help the process.
And so, just as a note, William, on SABA's website, we take electronic donations. So if you want to donate by electronic check or by a credit card or debit card, we actually accept So you'd immediately not only have the proof, but you'd also get immediately a receipt as well.
So if that's the case, they have until December 31st at 11:59 p.m. because it'll be timestamped before the end of the year.
Exactly.
Tomorrow's better, but if we have to drag feet, we can wait till the very end for that.
Agreed. And then we have our next question coming in. Does the government charge any special tax for folks that are on a visa when they make a charitable contribution?
If they are legal to work in the States and have to file returns here, meaning that they're not filing a 1040 NR, they're treated just like any other person who has to file. The one beautiful thing about the U.S. tax code is that it's equal opportunity. It wants everyone's money equally, and so unfortunately, they have to take the taxes and the donations equally as well. So there isn't really a delineation between that. As long as you're required to file the 1040 form, all is the same. The U.S. is odd duck too, because even if you moved out of the country, they still think that you owe them money. So it has to kind of balance a little bit. You're usually in their favor, but at least it's consistent, the treatment all the time.
Fair enough. So just as a clarifying, it doesn't matter what necessarily your visa, whether you're an H-1B or what have you, as long as you are liable for any kind of tax, these still apply to you on charitable. Got it. Next question. Can you talk about donor advised fund?
Ooh. Someone actually brought that up at DAF. Yeah, they're new, not really new. They've been around for a number of years now, but they're seeming to come more into favor now. And when I was talking earlier about there's things you can do beyond just a straight donation, donor advised funds are one of those things. Donor advised funds, for lack of, and it's probably a little much for this venue, but I'll give a very distilled version. Think of it as a mini trust or a mini foundation. So I give $10 million to my own donor advised fund. I get the donation now. I control where those donations go. So I have a long hook on that donation. There are a number of companies who handle these donor advised funds that can do a variety of different charitable acts within them. But they're not as common as we would like them to be. But we have a couple colleagues and clients who one of whom actually runs donor advised funds. So we're pretty familiar with them. You don't run into as much because it typically takes a pretty significant amount of money to make them make sense, to create that extra layer of work between you and the donation. But definitely something, if someone does have a specific question, they can always find us offline and we can point them in the right direction or advise them as needed.
Sure. What would you say is the ballpark figure for it to start making sense?
Typically in excess of 7 figures is kind of the starting point. Really, when you're approaching 8 is really kind of where it makes, and that's an opinion thing. And that's all contingent on tax laws not changing, because I have to now backtrack everything I say because I'm an accountant, so everything is both answers. But typically we see them most beneficial with clients who are giving typically around 10 million or more. But I still see them make sense in the $1 million range. But they're not really, I don't think they're the best vehicle if you're doing a smaller donation. If you're doing a few $100,000 a year, I think it's more appropriate if you're going to be doing one. If you are employee number 4 at Apple, you need a donor advised fund, and that's really kind of the situation where we're talking significant money, but you don't want to have your own charitable foundation.
Fair enough. And then I'm just going to encourage everybody one more time, because they're pinging other folks. Again, on the bottom of the screen, you should see a Slido link. You're going to be using the hashtag SABA to ask your questions. Again, we're taking advantage of William's expertise. This would be a really great opportunity for you to jump in and ask a few questions. All right, next one, William. And I think you and I we jokingly talked about this prior to starting, but somebody asked, are there any are charitable donations counted as one-to-one deductions?
Everyone wishes that to be the case, and the way the tax code worked, not quite. So in a basic nutshell, there are a few hurdles you have to get over. So in today's world, with the Schedule A's being different, you have to be itemizing for charitable donations to count. So if you're not doing itemized donations, donate more than you will be, and that will allow you to take the itemized deduction, and that will lower your taxable income. So it's reducing your taxable income, which is really saving you the equivalent of whatever your tax bracket is.
Mhm.
So if you're in a moderate high tax bracket federally and the standard tax bracket for the state, you may be saving 30 to 40 cents on the dollar, but you're not going to be saving dollar for dollar just because it lowers your taxable income. It's not a tax credit. Only tax credits lower dollar for dollar, and they're much harder to get your hands on for
Very
obvious
good.
reasons.
Awesome. And then the next question is for year 2020, does the donation to be more than 24,000 to make a difference in reducing taxes?
So that's a backdoor question into, am I going to be itemizing or taking the standard? The standard deduction is fundamentally $24,000. It moves, and I know that's not the exact number, but for extents and purposes, it's 24,000. So if you're not giving enough between your charitable, your property tax, and your SALT limitations and your mortgage interest to get above that, you're not really gleaning the benefit of it. And so you need to look at your overall Schedule A. If you're in an ownership of a home, you're likely going to be pretty close to the standard deduction in most areas. Um, Obviously not all of the country, but in most areas you're going to be closer to that. And then the charitable likely will put you over the limit. But under the current tax regime, the standard deduction being significantly higher than historically has been, has diminished the deductibility of charitable as a result of that, which is why we encourage people to either give more to charity, or the expectation I think is that when the Tax and Job Act expires, charitable donations will be a lot more beneficial to most taxpayers.
Got it. Before we move on to the next question, I also want to make sure that we note if you are watching the YouTube live link, in the description, there is a link to donate to SABA. And so one of the questions that came up was, is there any link to donate to Rise Academy? Once you go to the donation links, you can actually select where you want the donation to go to. There's also a PayPal link for you to, if that's easy. And there's also a Zelle link as well, which is at saba-igc.org, where you can make donations. As William is saying, the sooner the better that you make these donations and you take advantage of these donations. William, the next question that we had was regarding the types of donations. So monetary donations. So let's say if I donate $50,000 compared to if I want to donate a car compared to donating my time. What is the different tiers that the tax law kind of distinguishes between these?
So if we're donating money, cash, it's pretty easy because it's cash. And so that falls in the same category. It's just very easy to do. Whether that be actual physical cash or a check, or you're paying through credit card, whatever it is, that's cash. You get the full benefit of that.
Mhm.
About 7, 8 years ago, maybe 10, because my memory kind of gets blurry once you go back a couple years. The IRS realized that people were able to value their vehicle at whatever value they thought was appropriate and get the charitable donation for that. So when I turn in my 1991 Honda Civic with 300,000 miles and say its high blue book value is $4,000, but it really doesn't run, they went, we should probably look into that. And unfortunately, they did. So what happens with the charitable donation of a vehicle is the charity then has to sell the vehicle, and whatever they sell it for is what the value that you get, or $500, whatever is higher. So the one caveat to that would be is if I gave a 10-passenger van to the mosque, I have to be able to say what the full market value is at that time. I would probably need to bring it to a dealer and say this is worth this amount of money, because the mosque wouldn't be selling it, they would be using it. But typically when you're donating cars, you're not donating cars in that matter, although I would encourage that as well. You're typically giving them away because you've got a new vehicle and that vehicle is no longer working for you. And so that's been the one change. So the entity has to sell it. Now, what happens a lot of times is people do it at the end of the year. So on Monday, they bring their 1991 Honda Civic in to donate. There's no way it's getting sold until well into the new year. And so you don't know what the value is unless you take that $500 until the new year. So you may have to wait longer for that. The last question is one that always is asked and no one likes the answer to, which is what happens if I'm donating my time? You get no deduction. Your time is your time. The difference would be in a situation, say I was being paid to be on this call. So my time has a value, it's worth the $1 million I think I'm worth in my head. And so I turn around and then give the $1 million to the mosque. So I would have to claim the income of $1 million, and then I would turn around and donate that to the mosque, that $1 million, which means that I'm paying taxes on the income and I'm not getting that full amount back, which is why that doesn't typically work very well. The only other change in that statement is if you are a professional, if you're a chiropractor, if you're a doctor, if you're a dentist, and you're donating a service that can then be given away, then you can get benefit from that. Because that service for someone, typically you see this when you have the raffles and the things that nonprofits do, where you're giving away a service, then you can ascertain that. But if you're giving away just your time and your skill, then it's just fulfillment, but not unfortunately a tax deduction.
Got it. So if you're providing a service, is the distinguishment here.
Mm-hmm.
And so just as a follow-up, if you're a doctor and you donate your, you're coming to donate your services to SABA, and in our case, would it be like by the hourly rate that you go by?
So if you're the doctor and you're donating your time still has no value.
Sure.
It's only, but if you had equipment that you had to use, gloves, that would be the donation portion that you would be able to deduct. Sure. The only difference would be, like for me, I use accountants because we have no product. We're just basically people who talk all the time, push papers around. And so there's a lot of accounting firms who do charitable time for tax returns. So we will allow seniors to come in, we'll do their tax returns for free, but we don't get a benefit from them. But the underlying cost of doing the return, whether that be software fees, paper, all of those things, if we can encapsulate those, we get the donation for that. But me being the professional there, I get no benefit for what would normally be my time. And so it's not the big savings of things. Now you do get a donation if you're that person who's driving to the mosque and helping. You get a donation for the mileage. You get a donation for all the expenses that you pay, but you don't get the benefit for just your time.
Got it. This is very helpful. Awesome. Next question. In terms of other ways to lower your taxable income, I have heard that what's referred to as a backdoor IRA. Can you explain this?
A backdoor IRA is it's pretty common. It's funny because when I do these things, I can always tell the questions that are come up because it's the same questions everywhere. Doesn't matter the setting; it's always the same question. So Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs are your two IRA vehicles. Roth IRAs, you pay taxes on the income now. You pay no taxes when you withdraw the money in the future. Traditional, you get the tax deduction now, and you pay taxes on the money when it comes out. So if you ask someone, do you think taxes are going to be higher or lower in the future? If they say higher, Roth, typically it seems to make more sense. However, Roth have very strict income limitations. If you make above a certain threshold, you're not allowed to use them. And so a lot of people go, hey, I want to have a Roth, but I make too much money. How do I get a Roth if I make too much money? Well, the answer is you can't have any other IRAs out there. You can't have any traditional IRAs when you do this. But you do a donation that's non-deductible because you're above the threshold into a traditional IRA. So you put the $6,000 in there. You get no deduction for it. You wait 2 days, and then you convert it from a traditional IRA into a Roth. And so typically a conversion from a traditional to a Roth is a taxable event because you've gained a tax deduction on the front end. But in this situation, you get a non-taxable IRA, so you had no deduction. It stayed in cash. And so the $6,000 is not taxable because it's still $6,000. And now you have a Roth. Voila. The problem is if you have another traditional IRA, say you had a $10,000 IRA out there and you did the $6,000 non-deductible. Well, now you're only going to have $16,000. If you do the conversion, you're either going to pay taxes on the larger one, or you're only going to get a partial savings on the transition. So make sure, I cannot stress this enough, make sure you talk to someone who knows what they're doing before you try to do this, because I've seen people significantly shoot themselves in the foot trying to do this. So, but it's a pretty common thing. Most all tax professionals worth their salt can walk you through how it works and make sure that you're going to be okay.
Got it. Got it. Got it. The next question was, why in the U.S. Social Security tax and Medicare tax paid does not lower AGI?
Because it doesn't exist. Because it happens before your income really starts showing up. So if you make $100,000, you're really getting taxed on the $100,000 at fundamentally 7.5%. That first number is all they care about. The only thing that's going to change that first number, your total income, would be retirement contributions. So if you put money in a 401k or a Roth 401k, that will lower your number. But the Social Security is not. What's doubly frustrating about Social Security is when you think about it, it's doubly taxed because you're getting taxed now. And when you're older, if you have other income, there's a good chance that up to 85% of your Social Security is going to get taxed again. So it's one of these ones where people hope you don't pay attention. You're actually getting double taxed to a certain extent on that money.
Got it. We have a lot of questions coming in. So the next one.
You put a tax guy on screen who's answering questions, and it's just like, ooh, free tax advice. We love it. Everyone loves free tax advice. You know, it's one of the beauties of the world. Free tax advice.
Awesome, awesome. So the other thing, so this one also applies to me. So I work at LinkedIn.
Okay.
LinkedIn, whatever you donate, they match it up to I think $10,000, I believe. So can you give us from two perspectives? One from the individual and one from, let's say, SABA's perspective. I donate $10,000. LinkedIn matches with another $10,000. Have I donated to SABA $20,000, and does the IRS recognize it as $20,000? And how does vice versa SABA see this money?
So we'll start with the easy side. SABA sees it as $20,000 of donations, which they can use, and they can use as they so desire. So that's easy. So for them, it's just income. It's non-taxable because of their tax status. For you as the individual giving the $10,000, you get a $10,000 deduction because that was your money. What's happening simultaneously is two things, and this is the reason why corporations do this. Corporations are also eligible to give charitable donations that are tax deductible. So they're also getting a tax deductible, the tax deduction for themselves, which is important because they like not paying taxes. Even more than we do. Oftentimes they like paying less taxes. But on top of that, they're actually creating goodwill with their employees. And so that's really kind of the backdoor reason they're doing that, is because if they know that you're donating and you know that you're getting money from your employer, you're more likely to see the employer in a positive light. They're getting a tax donation, you're getting a tax donation. The nonprofit's super excited because they're getting double the tax donation. But reality, it's more of a mental thing. These organizations are doing it to generate goodwill, so that when you're working those 80-hour weeks, I mean that you're but they gave SABA $10,000. We like them. Got to keep working hard, and so that's how that works.
Awesome. So for it would be, let's say, from the individual, this 10K, maybe 20K that we're seeing, really 10K is what that we would see the benefit from. But SABA at the end of the day does see that whole $20,000. So in all intended purposes, that money did go a little bit further. Now, from a deduction standpoint, what does that look like?
So from the deduction standpoint, that $10,000 would show up on your Schedule A, and then would reduce your taxes according to your tax bracket. So if you're in the 33% bracket and the 9% state, you've just saved a pretty significant amount of money. And really, if you're working for an entity and you're able to afford to do so, you should be trying to take advantage of all that quote unquote free money, right? You just like with your 401k, you should always be doing the amount at least up to the match. Obviously more, but at least to the match, for the reason that it's free money. And if you have organizations that you do want to support and that you do support, and your employer is providing money that you can match, then get it in gear and donate that money, and so that you can get that money. I mean, I can't say this out loud, even though I'm on out loud. I've seen people actually give other people money so they can donate money to the organization to get the full donation. I mean, these multinational corporations have millions and millions of dollars. And the fact of the matter is that there's a ton of the money in the pool for these charities that don't get used because people are not maxing them out. And they should. You really should try to get all the money that you can out of your employer, especially if it's going towards a good cause.
Okay. We're going to only take one more question just because we're coming up on time and our next program is going to start. I think do you have any general advice when it comes to charitable donations? So we leave this up to your interpretation of best practices, especially given this time of year.
So, and this is kind of more from my background as a financial planner as well. I learned, I worked closely with Second Harvest Food Bank of San Mateo and Santa Clara counties for about 15 years. I actually ran the retirement plan for them. So I had a lot of interactions with them about how charities actually function. And I think it's important that donors understand how and where the money is utilized. I'll take the school, for example. So your school is doing a lot of good works, and they need things, and they always will need things because schools are constantly in a state of flux. I would say more so than a mosque. Mosque, things kind of march along at the same kind of pace, but a school is look at now. We have this constant thing, and if they're not getting the money, if we're not opening up our wallets and giving those funds, we're doing that educational system a disadvantage. And the one odd piece of advice that I always give people, which strikes them as odd, is try to focus your donations. Unless you're giving away tens of $1 million, or Jeff Bezos' ex-wife who gave $4.6 billion away. If you've got a limited amount of money, $10,000, $20,000 you're donating, try to be very specific. Don't try to give it to everybody. Try to be more specific, because that $20,000 is going to make a lot more difference for the school than it will be if you give 500 to the school, 500 to this charity, 500 to that charity. It's the same amount of money, but it's a lot more focused. And it was really hard for me to wrap my head around that when I first heard that. But like, we would rather people not get, this is the food bank, big organization. Don't give us money. If you have a small organization that you support, give it to them. It's going to be more impactful, which I always thought was a very interesting thing where, you always think of nonprofits as give me money, give me money. But the reality is, for the small donations, it's better to focus your attention to one or two organizations that you really have association with, and allow them to use that money a lot more effectively than if you're watering it down, for lack of a better explanation, to 30 different groups. If everyone's getting $50, that's not the same as one person getting a lot more.
And I'll make actually one last note in regards to employer matching. So, for example, LinkedIn uses, and I'm forgetting the name of the company, as a third party to do this donation matching. They don't allow donations to religious organizations. So religious 501(c)s.
But the school isn't a religion.
That's exactly it. So I was actually able to donate to Rise Academy as an organization through that program, and it was accepted and it was there. So I definitely encourage, if you are trying to donate, whether to SABA, if that's not available, then definitely to exactly what William said, is like to a school that constantly has is an influx of in its needs. So definitely encourage you to check out Rise Academy, or it's sometimes listed under Imamiya Education. So you may be able to find it in that program in those two ways. So I encourage you guys to look at that. With that said, William, thank you so much for your time. We really are honored to have you. We really appreciate that you took out time Christmas Eve to come speak to us. And we wish you the best of luck on your runs. With that said, I want to introduce, before you leave, I want to introduce Said Abidi. Said Abidi will be giving our speech, followed up by Kumayl program. Said Abidi.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank Mr. William for your time. Oh, I'm sorry.
Gotta love technology.
Can you hear me right now?
Said, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
All right, we can't hear you just yet.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank Mr. William for your time. I know that there's the eve of the Christmas night and best day. I would like to thank you and your family for your stealing valuable time in this crucial time. And it's a lot for us, for our members, and for all those who are looking for last minute donations. And I hope that lots of people, they got lots of benefits from your talk. And I would like to thank you again, and may God bless you and your family.
Thank you.
Before you leave, one small, the correction and also a question, and you can maybe give us a little bit of background, then I can let you go. The one point which I want to mention is, Alhamdulillah, we have whether a RISE education system, which is completely 501c3, non-religious, non-profit organization. And then we have a RISE, the KISA Kids and KISA affiliates, which is Imamia Education Center. That's religious education. And then we have a religious non-profit, which is SABA. So people, they can donate either of these organizations, and we appreciate that. Thank you. The question is, this is also for the bookkeeping purpose. Our bookkeeping people, they have a little bit of difficulties that you said if you as a donor, you write a check before December 31st, and you mail it, and you can track it, and you can claim that this is for 2020. But for our bookkeeping purpose, often we have a deadline that, for example, 5th of January. But like 8th of January and 9th of January, we deposit. And for in our bookkeeping system, it goes for 2021. But like Ayman comes to us and tells us that, no, you need to give me for 2020. So this is a little bit of bookkeeping difficulties. What is your advice in that?
So both are right, which is that's the frustrating thing about the beginning of the year. In that scenario, let's say Ayman gives us $50,000, and it doesn't arrive until after the new year, and it doesn't get into the bank until the 15th of January. Well, the nonprofit would show it as income for 2021, but Ayman would still get the donation for 2020. But the issue would be is that the documentation that the mosque would provide for that $50,000 that he's generously given us, that would show 2021, as long as he doesn't double dip. As long as he doesn't take the 50,000 in 20 and 21, should be no issue. Because the reality is it's the responsibility of the taxpayer, which in this case would be Ayman, to report the income in the proper year. For the mosque, it's the right thing because they received it in the correct year. You see that very common. And the IRS does give a great deal of leeway in that, as long as everyone knows that we're not taking it twice, so that the mosque isn't not claiming it in either year, and that Ayman isn't claiming it in both years. As long as that doesn't happen, it's a non-issue. But it's a very common question. You see that a lot also with small businesses who don't check their mail from December 28th through the 2nd of January because they don't want to claim that income in the current calendar year. And so the end of the year does pose very unique, which goes back to give often and give early. And that's usually the best way to avoid that.
Thank you, William, for your explanation, and I wish the best for you and your family. And by the way, we accept any amount from the people, those who come and enlighten us. Like you promise us to give us $5 million, we accept that.
They'll be with my picture on the check. It might be a little rubbery, but it would be. I definitely could do that.
Ayman will going to fill that up. Whatever the remaining amount
I'm
is.
a witness. I'm a witness.
Thank you again. I'm going to call you later on because we want to have some more questions, and maybe we can talk to you about our organization.
And I do really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. I enjoy these things, unlike a lot of accountants. I like talking. I like learning about things and answering all the fun questions. So if anyone does have questions, please, I think you guys have my contact information and the firm's contact information. We're definitely still taking on new clients, and we're always looking for new places and opportunities to expand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تصامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجة وعظم فيما عندك رغبة اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكروك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء قلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوحاني وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلاني وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخضعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطاني يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعاني ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما هوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى عليه فيه قضاءك وألزمني حكمك وبلاغك لقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيما مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا نتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياه في سعة رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري أفكني من شد وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع ما ربيت أو تبعد من أذنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا على ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا رب وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكتوم يسير بقاء قصير مدة فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل الوقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدة ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها ضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته، أمن طول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار وهو رجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآمنين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. اللهم صل على محمد. يا إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جوارحي واشدود علي على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أصرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البارزين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن كادني فكيد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجدني بجودك وعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأخلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت علي عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رسوم عليه الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهل وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر.
بسم الله
الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين عملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أفوض أمري إلى الله والله بصير بالعباد. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية الإكرام على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والشهداء والصالحين والصديقين وعلى خير خلقه البشير النذير السراج المنير الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين والعنوا دائما على أعدائهم أعداء الله من يوم ظلمهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إلهي أنطقني بالهدى والهمني التقوى برحمتك أرحم الراحمين. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, first and foremost, I would like to welcome once again for the Thursday night program, night before Friday. It's a great night, perhaps the last Thursday night of this year 2020. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless upon us and all the families, all the ni'mat and rahmat, especially the shafaat of Ahlul Bayt. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to perform our duties and responsibilities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove us from darkness and error. Alhamdulillah. Brothers and sisters, Alhamdulillah, tonight will be the beside the Thursday night, the last Thursday of this year 2020, the eve of the Christmas. I know that some traditions, although they indicate that the milad and birth of great prophet of Allah, Hazrat Isa, Jesus, will be in the spring, but this is what a good number of people, they believe that tomorrow. I would like to extend my tabrikat, tahiyat, Mubarak to all the believers, whether Christians or Muslims, for the eve of the Milad of Hazrat Isa, Jesus alayhi salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless upon us all the bounties and blessings, inshallah. With that, I would like to begin with our discussion, which is a common misconception people they have about Islam and also about the the Muslims and so on and so forth. I listed some of those. I started that. Tonight, I would like to give you a little bit of background, so inshallah, all of us, we can be on the same page. What happened is this summer, which this year 2020 summer, we had a good program for internship for those who wants to research about some of the key topics. One of the key topic came up is about the misconception of Islam and Muslims. What we did is, alhamdulillah, with 12 researchers, we started with 7 different research medium, and also approximately 200 plus hours we spent to know what is happening. The research medium also was social media, which is majority of the people right now. They are getting the informations and they rely on social media. Then YouTube, and also TV, news channels, books, whether from Amazon or any other famous bestseller books. Newspapers, which is majority of the time people, they want to just see what is happening. Hate websites, because some of the websites they designed to attack Islam and also Mu'minin and Shia, and we kind of see what is the background, who is behind the scene, and so on and so forth. And also top Islamophobic the movements. So we search that and we find out these result. So you see that first, Allah, subhanallah, these are the 6 topics will come up everywhere when we talk about misconception against Islam. People, they talk and discuss against Muslims and so on and so forth. The first thing will come out is extremism. Basically, when we talk about extremism, it's not that is some small element of every community, whether you're Hindus or Buddhist or Muslims or Christian or any other religion. Small minorities, they a small number of people, they do these type of nonsense things. But the ironic point here is we have to understand the complete scope of that. When we talk about extremism, the claim here is Islam leads to extremist actions. This is what a big misconception. When they see the number, subhanallah, 1400 years Islam exists. From the day first till today, right now 1.8 billion Muslims live around the world. All the benefits and all of that, they don't see that. What they see is Islam leads to extremist action. Second, terrorism. Again, when we talk about terrorism, the same thing. They don't talk about, for example, every community, every country, every religion. They have elements to it, and people, they take it out of the context and they act independently and so on and so forth. But the misconception here is Islam is not a religion of peace. The third, Sharia law. Sharia law, they refer to a law, Sharia law, which is presented by Wahhabism, Salafi, Deobandi, or you can call it Taliban, Boko Haram, Daesh, ISIS, and all of. So what they do is they say that this Sharia law is contradict and does not align with the Western values. The fourth point is there's a movement that Reformation, Islam reform, Quran needs to be edited and changed. Then you have a LGBT movement and the rights of LGBT and how it contradicts with Islamic values. The next one is women's right. Women's right, although some of these point is, the way they present it is a misconception. Some of that is the understanding. Some of that is they want to impose women's right, which I think we talked and discussed in last 2 meetings or the programs. So then here is a very important point to understand. Most popular Islamophobic categories, right? Those who are promoting all of that is, subhanallah, in social media, books, and top Islamophobic in all of these 3, you can see that ex-Muslims ex-Muslims movement is right now, they are creating lots of misconceptions and fitna, and based on whether they're uh, uh, findings or experience or what not, right? And then they are imposing or they're generalizing towards Islam. Although some other elements also to it, then when it comes to TV news channels, still in TV news channels, predominantly right-wing outlets, they are dominating. When you see a little bit more to it, you can see that, for example, top source research is 28, right? Out of this, you can see red flag as for NBC, Fox News, CNN, CBS, and so on and so forth. And in all of that, we can see that women's rights, violence, LGBTQ, and other topics. So here, key topics of attacks. Again, it's going to be lots of consistency in all of those in these areas. Sharia law, women's rights, LGBT, accusing Muslims of anti-Semitism. This anti-Semitism also is very common in some of the news agencies when you hear from Fox News and so on and so forth. These are the things happening. Although I'd like to mention that when it comes to the hate websites, we have two types of hate websites. One is against Islam and one is against Shia. Is one of the eye-opening point is when it comes to the attack to Shia, majority of these websites are funded by either Saudi, or Qatar, or UAE, or Bahrain. These are the things you can find out. Again, we can talk and discuss in detail about that later on. Just I thought that it's good to bring these points so we can be in the same page, inshallah. So, brothers and sisters, we had some discussions about different topics. Today, I would like to bring one more question, which is aligned with what we talk and discuss. Is Islam a violent religion? As I said, the terrorism or violence, or you can see that extremism, fanatism, and so on and so forth, all of that is coming from some of the ayat which they find problematic and people they are using against Islam and creating a lots of misconception and misunderstanding, and also they are taking a direction which is not true at all. So here's a point, brothers and sisters, it's very important to understand and to be in same page. When it comes to these types of ayats, which is jihad, one of the major topic and discussion is jihad. The point about jihad is, okay, you know what, jihad is holy war, and Islam gives the permission for Muslims to conquer and take over the lands of non-Muslims and to kill non-Muslims anywhere they find, and so on and so forth. If you, again, here is different stages. I want to go step by step so we can have a better understanding. First and foremost, there is a difference between qital and jihad. In Quran, in most places when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers or uses jihad, وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ, which is a struggle all of us we have with our wealth with ourselves, with our anger, with our inner temptations, and so on and so forth. So we have two types of jihad, jihad akbar and jihad asghar. Jihad akbar is fighting against inner enemy, right? And jihad asghar is what called qital, right? I want to make sure that people they understand. We have 6,236 ayats. If you see the amount Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses Rahman, Rahim, all compassionate or merciful, is way more than what one can imagine. In all the books which is refer to the books of divinely revealed book, you can go, you can see, you can research, you can find that amount of all compassion, or mercy, kindness, and so on and so forth. You can find in Quran, no other book you can find. In fact, even if you take the Constitution of United States, also refers some sort of defense, right? Congress has some authority, the president has authority, and each and every single civilian of any nation, they have a duty to defend themselves. So it's insane to say that because it's a divinely revealed book, you should not have any type of example, consequences or punishment or standing for right or defending yourself. It's insane to say that. That's why you can go, you can see in Bible, although there's a discussion about whether today's Bible is the authentic Bible, we don't believe that. But even what are the Bible they have, you can go, you can see that you'll see a lot of places it has mentioned about defense, defending, the wars, and so on and so forth. You can go, you can see any book which is considered as a book of revealed by God, although we believe that Quran is the only complete comprehensive book, but others they believe other things, right? Nonetheless, first thing, in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a good balance. That's why when it comes to jihad, what to do, and so on and so forth. Second, the surah and sunnah of Holy Prophet. And what Holy Prophet did, the one who is a founder and the one who brought this book, right? The one who laid down this system. It's very important that we need to align with the one who brought this system. So noble Prophet of Islam, he lived for 60 plus years, 63 years. First 40 years, he was able to acquire the title from the people as a Amin and Sadiq. Then 13 years in Mecca, he was attacked by pretty much every single person there, including his family members and so on and so forth. The violence was against him and his followers. Then 10 years in Medina. 10 years in Medina, that was a peak time. Although in all those 10 years, Holy Prophet, he was able to maintain and manage 80 plus small and big battles, ghazawats, right? So in all those 80 plus ghazawat or battles, you can see that noble Prophet of Islam, he launched the defense one, not offensive war. And the reason is around Medina, majority of these battles happen. So it means if Holy Prophet, he is fighting around Medina, those who are coming from Taif, from Mecca, from other places, it means Holy Prophet is defending. Otherwise, if Holy Prophet he is going for offensive war, he has to go to Taif, he has to go to Syria, he has to go to Mecca, right? So he's not going. Neither Yemen, Mecca, Taif, Iran, or Rome, or any of this. So we don't have any single evidence that Holy Prophet he launched the war against Rome Empire at that time, or China, or India, Iran, or even within the Arabian Peninsula, whether Damascus, or African countries, or even within the Saudi, Taif, or Mecca. No, majority of those battles happen around the Medina. That itself shows that people used to travel all the way from different places to attack Islam. So he was defending. So the Sunnah or Seerah of Holy Prophet. And when Holy Prophet, he was in absolute power, subhanAllah, this is very important to understand that. When Holy Prophet, he was absolute power, upper hand, he was ready in 7th Hijri, he was ready to go to Mecca for the purpose of pilgrimage, right? Thousands of people, they went with Holy Prophet. They're ready to fight. But when Meccan people, they came, 300 people, they said, we want to have a treaty. It's called Sulh Hudaybiyah, the peace treaty of Hudaybiyah. Holy Prophet accepted. Although some of the Muslims, they are not in favor of having a Sulh Hudaybiyah or peace treaty of Hudaybiyah, but noble Prophet of Islam, he did. Furthermore, when they break all the agreements and so on and so forth, they started again creating a mischief and all of that, then Holy Prophet, he enters to Mecca victorious. But once he enters to Mecca, not even one single word came out from Holy Prophet that go and kill these people, those who ruin all of those years, and so on and so forth. No. Even one of the biggest enemy of Holy Prophet was the head of the Mecca, which is Abu Sufyan, and Holy Prophet, he gave him a shelter. Subhanallah. So this is the Sunnah of Holy Prophet. Quran, thousands of places, Rahman, Rahim, Kareem, Ra'uf, Ghafoor. Yes, few ayat, as I quoted, these ayat also is there to defend. We cannot have Quran or any complete package for, Islam is a complete package for lifestyle. 360-degree lifestyle, complete package. So in that package, you need to have some laws to resist, to stand for rights, and so on and so forth. Yes, but majority of those not. Holy Prophets, Seerah. And then after Holy Prophet, yes, there was an era which was against the will of our Imams, right? We believe that after Holy Prophet, Imam Ali, he should be the divinely appointed leader. Although it didn't happen. When it didn't happen, the Khilafat was taken to a different direction. And some clashes you can see that time. And that has nothing to do with a pure Islam or the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, when Imam Ali took the position in last 5 years of his life, 4.5 years, he engaged in 3 battles. All 3 battles are within the Muslim Ummah, those who came and those who launched the chaos among the Muslim Ummah, right? And today, 1.8 billion Muslims they live. You can see that if one Muslim, or even so-called Muslim, or even the person whose name could be anything, but if it's by mistake is Muslim name, the media coverage is multiple times, and the hostile environment and talking and so on and so forth is there. In fact, if you see all these big terrorist organizations are either funded by so-called those who are fighting today against them, the Western countries, whether Taliban, Al-Qaeda, or even, for example, ISIS. You can go, sometimes we have a short memories. You can go, you can see that, how it happens. When there was a beginning in Syria, and who supported all those terrorist group, either allies of the Western countries, or weapons and everything was going from here. It's not Muslim movement. And in fact, majority of those who were affected were Muslims, right? You can see that. Whether in Pakistan, or in Afghanistan, or in Iraq, or in other countries, majority of those who pay the price are Muslims. So it is not the point of, Islam is like that. So no one is talking about, for example, some of the Christian people, those who are dead, as Christianity should be blamed, whether Hitler or the one who killed in New Zealand tens of people, dozens of people, or in Finland, or in Europe, or even in America, or in Las Vegas, and so on and so forth. People that don't call. So it's not people, it's kind of media. That's why what I was talking about, the agenda behind the scene, and how people how those who are engineering even the news and so on and so forth. You can see sometimes you believe that the president famous quote is true in lots of cases, which is fake media, right? So fake media is promoting a lots of these misconceptions, and they're not giving the equal chance to the Muslim views, and so on and so forth. In general, I would like to mention, brothers and sisters, we are living in an era where attack is coming from different places, and we as a Muslims, we need to understand first the scope of the attack, misconception, and we cannot live in this hostile environment. And just we cannot ignore the fact, or we cannot blame to others, or I cannot wash my hands that, what, I cannot do anything, and therefore I have to, for example, sit and do nothing. No, we have to stand for our right. Alhamdulillah, millions of Muslims, they live here in America with peace, harmony. Whether innovators, scientists, engineers, physicians, doctors, nurses, firefighters, policemen, in every walk of the life here, you can see that millions of Muslims, they live in complete peace and are contributing a big portion to this society, and they're taxpayers, and they're doing right. Alhamdulillah. So when we see these types of misconception exist, we as a Muslims, it's our duty, for example, in these Christmas days or a New Year, whether we reach out to our the neighbors or co-workers or any other places, we can go and we can talk to them. We represent, instead of hiding our identity or pretending that nothing is happening, or I don't want to associate myself, or even sometimes people are changing the names is not going to give us any good for our future. By the way, this is a principle that no one can give our rights. We need to stand for our rights. It's our haqq. This is our right to stand for our rights. Alhamdulillah, we have a glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alaysa subhu biqareeb. End of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. And we can see the ultimate peace and justice will establish by Imam of our time. And this is a promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter how corruption go big, this bubble of corruption will end. This bubble of double standard, corruption, oppression, tyranny, blaming, causing the mischief, and so on and so forth, we're not going to stay there forever. From the time of Namrud, Haman, Fir'aun, all of those oppressors exist in the course of history till today. Everyone has an expiration date, and it will end. What will remain is haqq and truth. Therefore, we should not be silent. We need to be heard. We need to be counted. We need to stand for our right. And we need to, promote the peace. And the best thing, brothers and sisters, is our own akhlaq, our own manners. If we begin to talk to people, if people they see our identity as our akhlaq, me being a Muslim, the way I'm interacting, the way I'm contributing, the way I want to be a good fellow citizen, the way I want to help other people, all of that with manners. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to perform our duties and responsibilities and to be a true ambassador of Islam, Quran, Ahlul Bayt in this part of the world. So inshallah, with the unity among the Muslims, among the Islamic centers, among the scholars, among the members of all the masajid, and also we can promote and act as an ambassador of Islam, Quran, and we can see a great result. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and give us strength and tawfiq, inshallah. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالأخص مرحومين الحاضرين يوم مرحومين المرحومات الفاتحة مع الإخلاص والصلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أزور سيدي ومولاي أبا عبد الله الحسين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه صالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالد والدي وأخواني المؤمنين والمؤمنات، لا سيما من قلدنا الدعاء والزيارة طاعة قربة إلى الله تعالى. أسأل الله الجاه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن، بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سل وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي بن الحسين عليهما السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة الأوصياء سلام الله عليهم أجمعين، الشهداء السعداء شهداء كربلاء. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله الحسين. بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم مطابة الأرض التي أنتم فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيارة العباس ابن علي سلام الله عليهم أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي لأخيه. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت في قتلك حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. فألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في دار النعيم. آمين رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى جدك وأبيك، وعلى أمك وأخيك، وعلى التسعة المعصومين من بنيك، لا سيما مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان عجل الله فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه في جملة أوليائه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى اللهم على محمد وآل محمد طيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.